welcome back. Nick here, CEO for Autosports. Glad to have you guys back. We got a fresh one on the stove. New to y'all, old to me kind of deal. We have a 74 Dodge B100 tradesman. The owner is Mr. Eric the Vintage Hunter Lewis, CEO of BC Modern. Check them out. What they specialize, or he and his family specialize in their business, is mid-century modern items. And that means from anywhere between the 50s and the 70s. He basically buys out estates. He has a very nice curated store where he selects items that have high value and nostalgia to his brand. It's cool because he does what he likes. It's not just everything in the store isn't just a bunch of money. It's stuff that he's passionate about and he knows about, and he brings that same passion to people. And it's the same type of vibes that I deliver at 414 Autosports. I like to do things for people that bring them joy. This is bigger than money to me. That's why when both of our brands have aligned on this project, it's been really special, because from jump, the goal behind this van was to have a walking billboard almost for both of the companies. Because when people see this van, they automatically know who the van is tied to, BC Modern, where it's on its way to go do, probably to drop off some items or pick some up, and who the hell built it, 414 Autosports. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a perfect harmony between companies. And I was allowed complete creative direction over this project from the jump. This actually happened to be one of the vehicles that he bought from an estate sale for cheap. It didn't drive, so that was the first order of business. Like I said, a lot of this work has been done. This has been a project that I've been building over the last couple of years, and we're pretty much at completion at this point. Right now is actually only in for some basic maintenance. We needed a power steering pump, needed some more brake work, actually needed a master cylinder. I had already done the brake lines on it, but the master cylinder went bad, so I went ahead and did that. But I really wanted to highlight some of the really cool features that I implemented into this build, because I was allowed to have complete creative direction. But at the same time, when I implemented things, I wanted to keep the brand intact. I wanted to be able to have implements of the vintage era that he's in, and also have period correct modifications so that it didn't take away from the overall value. And that's something that I've been able to really accomplish, because you can tell when that was accomplished by the attention that it gets from all walks of life. It doesn't matter, from business owners to regular people that have jobs, they all gravitate towards the van. And that's something I'm really proud about. So like I said, I'm going to walk through some of the few modifications that I did. Specifically, I'm going to start off first with the digital dash. I made a complete digital dash from scratch. Intellitronics sells a kit. It's like a universal kit. Basically comes with all the LED gauges and some plexiglass, and basically the whole building kit so that you can fabricate your own digital dash. So I purchased that kit, and I was able to create a digital dash that went inside of the van that looks factory. That was, like I said, one of the biggest goals of doing modifications to cars in general. Is I like shit to period correct, especially older cars that were trying to keep more on a stock form. So I was able to add the digital dash. There's also some other gauges in the center console I'm going to show you. It's got time. It's got RPMs. There's another gauge in there I'm forgetting right now, but there's 3 gauges that I was also able to modify in the dash and have wired up correctly. I also did some minor engine modifications. We went ahead and, we took it a step further when I initially installed the carburetor, because that's what it needed just to run. I upgraded the top end of it, where I went ahead and put a Street Demon carburetor on it on top of a poly intake, just to let it breathe a little bit better. This might add a few extra ponies, but it's not going to give it crazy amount of horsepower, just so it sounds really decent. I also went ahead and did the exhaust on it. The last bit of work I was able to also accomplish was install a complete audio system. From factory, this van had no audio, not even a radio. So I had a custom modified speaker placement throughout the video, or throughout the van, I'm sorry. So I'm also going to be showing you how I went about doing that. We're also going to be upgrading the speakers also. So the speakers that I originally put in there, he actually had these 6x9s in his basement somewhere from 5, 6, 7 years ago. And if you know anything about technology, especially audio technology, gets old fast. So speakers from 5, 6, 7 years ago are literally outdated. So the new speakers that I'm going to upgrade are so much more, they're better. They're louder, they're more crisp, they require less power, the whole nine. So check it out as I first go through the digital dash placement and how it all works. Everything functions like normal, like factory. We've got interior gauges, are all digital and accurate. Systems that need to be monitored are functioning correctly. Temperature, volts, fuel, oil pressure, as well as a custom installed horn button, all in a factory-like appearance. Park reverse neutral drive as well. So, briefly showed you how I went about installing, or not how I went about it because it's already done, but I briefly showed you the digital dash install in the 74 Dodge B100, as well as the digital gauges that I also installed in the center of the dash. It didn't stop there with just cosmetic upgrades. We also did some performance upgrades to the engine. I did a baby top end upgrade, and I call it a baby top end upgrade because an actual top end upgrade in an American car typically means new heads, intake, camshaft, and a carburetor. In intake, I only did an intake and a carburetor. I went from the factory 2-barrel carb to a Holley street dimming 4-barrel carburetor, as well as a Holley performer intake and some nice valve covers to dress it up. This kind of modification typically doesn't require much, specifically the Holley carb. That's why I love them so much. They really require not a lot of tuning and setup. It's pretty much put it on there, adjust your choke, and it's ready to go. And it's been ready to go in driving the last couple of years. I just wanted to go about and show you, first of all, the entire engine bay, but what it would take to adjust the carburetor via your your air and your fuel mixtures. You do that via vacuum gauge. So I'm gonna show you real quick how you go about tuning your carburetor, and then we'll kick it off towards the audio. Not only did we do some cosmetic upgrades to Big Booty Judy, I showed you the digital dash, a few of the digital gauges. We also did some engine modifications. It wouldn't be right at 414 Autosports if I didn't. So just some light ones. I just did the top end of it, no camshaft. Normally when someone says top end, it's intake, heads, camshaft, carburetor. But all I really did was added a new Holley intake and a new Holley street dimming carb, and then also some cool valve covers to dress up the engine bay. Other than that, nothing really too crazy, but really the purpose, I wanted to go in depth with this particular section of this build to show you how you go about properly tuning the carburetor. Now, it's already been done. Like I said, this car has been on the road for, like I said, a couple years now, but I wanted to go in and see if I'm able to unlock a little bit more performance out of the carburetor. It's more than just setting the choke on the carburetor and go. Sometimes you have to adjust the idle and the air mixture so that the carburetor is able to respond how it's supposed to. So the first thing that you do when you want to adjust the carburetor is you want to get a vacuum gauge. So I've already taken the liberty to hook the vacuum gauge up. You want to get your vacuum reading from a strong vacuum source. I couldn't get it from the carb on this one just due to the fittings it has on this aftermarket carb. So I went directly on the intake. And what you want to do is obviously have the vehicle running, and you want to get it up to operating temp. And the goal is to adjust the idle and the air and the fuel mixtures to keep the vacuum somewhere between 18 and 21 is the sweet spot. Now, if it goes past 21 and it starts to run shitty, you got too much. If it goes below where it's at now and it starts to run shitty, you don't have enough. So this is key, and it's like critical, so you have to get crisp and throttle and proper throttle response. So on this one, the mixtures are on the front of the carb, weirdly enough. Right, so the adjustment screws are on the front of the carburetor, and I'm actually gonna tune it from the front. It's easier to reach it and see my vacuum gauge, just because this is a van and vans are weird and how they are even shaped, because obviously on these they have what you call a doghouse. So the doghouse covers the entire engine side of the van, and that's pretty much how you service a lot of it. When you're making your adjustments, I gotta make them approximately quarter turn at a time until I come to a nice idle and a nice crisp throttle response. Now I've got it right back at its sweet spot. I went back to where it was. And this is the beauty about Holley carburetors. I fucking love them, because from factory, they're typically good to go. because from factory, it pretty much was set where it needed to be. I made an adjustment in the opposite direction, half a turn, and it went up to 19 PSI on my gauge, and I'm gonna leave it there. Here what we got from factory, the panels come just like, so what I've did to make a custom solution so that he has audio is the 6x9s are attached and they're secure. They've been on here for 2 years. Peel back this here panel and we just got to get to it from in the back. So as you can see here in the back, that is how I'm able to securely mount the 6x9 to this flat panel. Just pieces of wood that are basically sandwiching the whole situation. So from the front, we have the speaker going through the stock original pad, and then I used a couple wood blocks on the back, 4 of them to be exact, on each corner of the 6x9 to secure it to here. So I pretty much ran through all of the major modifications that I went ahead and did on this 74 Dodge B100 van. There was a few small little finishing touches I did, for an example, such as the headlights. You've probably been wondering about that. I went ahead and put halo light modification. Surprisingly, this is one of the easier modifications that I went ahead and did on the Dodge. Upon completing that air and fuel mixture and in the midst of adjustments, I noticed an important little nugget, that the motor currently is experiencing blow-by. Now, as I said before, again, a lot of the work has been done years ago. It's coming up on 3 years since I put the intake and the Holly Street Demon carburetor on there and the new distributor on there. So it's been driven the past couple of years. Now, currently, it's experiencing blow-by, which means a slow death. When you have blow-by, that means the piston rings have been worn past their tolerances. So what's happening is when the engine is running, your oil has to stay below the piston rings. Its job is to lubricate the piston ring. All right. So when the piston rings get old or start to go bad, what happens is this oil that's supposed to stay below the piston rings and just lubricate the piston rings ends up into the combustion process in the combustion chamber. So once this oil leaks past the piston rings into the combustion chamber, it starts to burn this oil. So when it burns this oil, you're going to see it in a multitude of places. From the tailpipe, usually first. Once it starts getting progressively worse, it's going to come out the oil dipstick, and it's also going to come out the valve cover. So in this case, like I said, when I was removing the doghouse to maybe adjust this carburetor, after running for a little while, I started to notice smoke coming out of the oil cap on the valve cover. And as well as there was oil residue and collect just under the oil cap, indicating that oil was making it past the piston rings. So with this new information, I reached out to the owner. Look, Judy's been back out in this world the last couple years. The next step and the next level is the motor is going to need to rebuild in the next couple years. I've given him some tips to prolong this, such as, for an example, keep it off the highway. When this car was out in the 70s, speed limits weren't 80, 90 miles an hour. There barely were the highways out in the world. There weren't as many highways as there are now. There weren't as many people driving in their cars. If you followed me and viewed episode 2 about the Mustang, I go over this topic about how old cars in their time period experience certain things just because of the time period. So again, fast forward to this example, this came out in the 70s, 74. So the speed limit wasn't 80 miles an hour, it's 50 miles an hour. And when people traveled and went places, they weren't on the highway going to this and that place and all over the freaking country all the time. So therefore, the vehicle wasn't designed to be at 70, 80 miles per hour at those prolonged clips, which would speed up the process of having bad piston rings, because this is an original motor. And another nugget to add into that whole spiel that I just told you about engines and how they came along since back in the day, they were designed around a specific RPM range. So for an example, American cars, they make their power in the low end. So your Dodge, your Ford, your Chevy, your Buick, they're making their power in the low RPM, somewhere between 2,000 and 3,500 RPM. So anything above that is pretty much a waste on a stock motor from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Does that make sense? So even if this motor were to get rebuilt it's still not designed from factory, from the jump, to be on a highway cruising at 70, 80 miles per hour. It will do it, but your RPMs are going to be really high. The rear end is not made for that type of highway cruising. The transmission doesn't have overdrive, so it's going to be drinking gas. So the evolution of Big Booty Judy, the next step is we're going to SRT swap this. Yes. In the next couple of years, he'll be able to enjoy it for maybe a year, maybe 2 years. Because what's going to happen is just going to burn oil. He's going to have to stay on top of the oil changes, and it's just not going to have the same power. It's eventually the life of it is just going to go down and down and down until it barely even wants to go over 40, 50 miles per hour type thing. So that's going to be the next step in the build, is to one day in the next couple of years, it's going to get an SRT swap. And like I said, that bit of information for you all to share with you is, like I said, older cars, when you buy them, if they're original and you want to enjoy it like a modern car, there's things you're going to have to do. Otherwise, you got to keep it in the city. Keep it on the side streets. Stay off the highway if you don't want to put the type of money into making it modern. Capiche?